In the early 20th century, some former camp slaves did receive state pensions. But if you're going to use those pensions as evidence for the existence of Black Confederates, then you're in for a shock. The pension applications make it very clear that these former camp slaves were not considered veterans, with lines like, "What was the number of the regiment in which your owner served?"
Right, that wasn't there. But I will say there were thousands of Black Confederates. Now, were they officially recognized soldiers? Absolutely not. The Confederate Army, Confederate government wasn't going to do that. It didn't mean that these people didn't serve in a military capacity. And I've said this before on this podcast. What you could call a soldier today, how we define a soldier today, was something that these people were doing. Right? So you had this support group. You had cooks, teamsters, people that would do labor. This is exactly what United States colored troops were doing in the early stages before they were put on the front lines, because you know why? White Northerners were tired of getting blown apart. So they stuck the former slaves out there, free blacks out there, to go do it for them. And that becomes an important part of the war. There's no doubt about that. But the fact is, to say these people weren't doing soldierly, in fact, Levin even admits they were doing soldierly things, but you can't call them soldiers because the Confederate government didn't call them soldiers. So were they soldiers or were they not soldiers? This is where this is why it's a straw man book based on semantics and why it's complete garbage. And the other thing it is a padded polemic. Okay, so those general observations out of the way. It's only 177 pages.
A slave. That photograph was probably taken in August of 1861. Andrew Chandler, the 17-year-old son of a wealthy plantation owner, had just enlisted as a private in the Confederate Army and decided to take Silas with him to war. The weapons they're holding are almost certainly studio props. It was common for young volunteers after enlisting to have, tough guy photos taken of them. It was also common for plantation owners to take a slave or two with them to war. Many of those slaves wore some kind of uniform, just as they had done in the Mexican War. But you are right about one thing, Johnny. Their pose is unusual. Most soldiers who are photographed with their camp slaves place themselves in positions of unquestionable dominance. This one definitely feels more buddy-buddy. Exactamundo! This is because they were the best of friends. Silas was free to travel from the plantation in Mississippi to wherever Andrew was. Andrew wrote home on the 31st of August, 1862, that the Federals might take Silas. I greatly fear another raid. Don't let them catch Silas. Be sure to write when Silas gets home. Andrew was severely wounded at the Battle of Chickamauga. On the Ottawa. Well, that's bullshit, but it is true that after Andrew was injured at Chickamauga, Silas helped him get back to the family farm. Because he loved him. He may have. We don't know for a fact that he didn't. But I think a much more likely explanation would be Silas's love for his own wife and newborn son, who were enslaved back at the plantation in Mississippi. When you have the safety of your family to think about, then you do what your master says. If he says, "Come to war with me," you go. If he says, "Hold this shotgun," and
again, this is why this book is very bad from the beginning. The title makes you think this is going to be a definitive book on Black Confederates. He's going to go out and find all these things. He's going to prove all these neo-Confederates, because that's what the book is about. All these neo-Confederates wrong. These people didn't exist. They're all made up. It's all based on semantics, you find out. He even admits it. Page 42, his reference to slaying Yankees, this is from a slave, suggests that he wanted his first battlefield experience to confirm some level of identification with his master and the rest of the unit. But there is no indication that Stephen viewed his battlefield exploits as reflective of any kind of loyalty to the Confederacy or unwavering fidelity to his master. The letter in question, if you go back and read it, he's pretty firm in that he's proud of what they were doing and killing Yankees. How do we know he didn't believe that? See, you can't believe this. There's no way. To Levin, who's ideologically driven, there's no way slaves and white Southerners and black Southerners could have any kind of relationship that wasn't based on violence. There's no way that blacks could have had any type of recognition of the cause with their masters. There's no way. That couldn't have happened. But we know throughout history this kind of stuff happened all the time. You had slaves identifying with the cause of the masters. You had it all the time, all throughout history. Yet, Levin doesn't think that can actually happen. You see, because he's clouded by his own ideology. He's clouded by his own preconceived notions of what Southern society is and what it wasn't. This is the real problem with the book.